Warning: the following video contains explicit language which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
What up, everybody? It's your boy Random News, and I want to welcome you to episode 2 of Random News Reports. Now, since the last episode, you guys told me you really liked how that went, so you want to see more. So in this one, we're going to go over a story that I'm sure most of you heard of from the past. We're going to talk about Charles Manson, Sharon Tate, and the Tate murders. Now, for those who aren't familiar with this, let me refresh your memory.
Night in Los Angeles, a movie actress and 4 of her friends were murdered, and the circumstances were lurid.
The news out of Los Angeles, August 10th, 1969, was shocking. 5 people had been brutally murdered. Among the dead, Roman Polanski's wife, Sharon Tate. She was 8 months pregnant.
She'd been stabbed, repeated stab wounds. One of the victims had a hood placed over his head, and the word pig was written in blood on the door.
But the carnage wasn't over. The following night, police found 2 more victims.
Lino LaBianca, a supermarket owner, and his wife had both been stabbed to death, repeated stab wounds. On his body, the word war had been carved in the chest. And then, with blood, the killer had scrawled on a refrigerator door the words, "Death to pigs." Hoods had been placed over the heads of both victims.
Despite the obvious similarities between the 2 murder scenes, Los Angeles police failed to make any connection until jailed Manson follower Susan Atkins began talking. Her story was chilling.
A lawyer for a girl involved in the peculiar gang which may have killed Sharon Tate and her friends described the killings today. The lawyer, Paul Caruso, said 5 people dressed in black entered Miss Tate's home after cutting the power and telephone lines and went methodically about the business of killing 5 people. The next night, he said, they killed a husband and wife, took a shower in their home, calmly ate some food, and left. Caruso represents Susan Atkins, a member of the gang, or commune. He said she and the others were completely under what he called the insane influence of Charles Manson.
It's all a play, isn't it?
Now, I want to be honest with you. This is the 3rd time I'm making this video. See, coming into this video, I knew what direction I wanted to take it into. But the more I researched this story, the crazier it got. See, originally, I was just going to talk about the Helter Skelter theory and go over the trial that came from this case. But the more I kept looking into this thing, the crazier it kept getting. But for you to understand, you need to know what the official narrative was. And that was done by the lawyer, Vincent Bugliosi. He was the prosecutor in this case, and he's the one who put Manson behind bars. He's the one that came up with this Helter Skelter theory. Now let's listen to what he said.
Manson idolized the Beatles. He thought they were prophets, and they were sending out messages beneath the lyrics of their songs, not only to him, but to other tuned-in people. And the Beatles came out with this album, I think they called it the White Album. It was all white. So Manson gets a hold of the album, and he comes back to the ranch, and he's all excited. And he tells the members of his family, the Beatles are telling it like it is. Helter Skelter's coming down. Helter Skelter to Manson meant the last final destructive war among men on the face of this earth. He called it Helter Skelter. There's another song on that album that they played quite a bit, Blackbird. And there's a verse in the song Blackbird about blackbirds fixing their wings, rising up and flying. So Manson told his family that by Blackbird, come on, we know what the Beatles are talking about. They're talking about the black man. And they're telling the black man to rise up against the white man. There's another song in that White Album called Piggies. To Manson, piggies were the white establishment. And the Beatles are saying in Piggies that the piggies deserve a damn good whacking. Showing you the connection between these songs and these murders. Certainly Helter Skelter was his primary motive. And the killers, that was their only motive, to follow Manson and start Helter Skelter. Manson had two other supplementary motives, one of which was this extreme hostility towards society. I don't think there's any question that on these two nights of murders, he was viciously striking out at the establishment, particularly to that Tate residence where he'd been booted off the premises. He didn't know who the victims were, but he sensed they were members of the entertainment industry, and he was striking out at the establishment. And then a third motive was his passion and his lust for death, blood, and murder. Talked about it all the time.
Now that Helter Skelter theory never really sat right with me because it just seemed a little too convenient and a little too easy. And the fact that every clip I ever seen of Charles Manson looked like this.
People look at you today, 20 years later, and they still have no idea what you're about. Tell me in a sentence who you are.
Yeah, and that's some real psycho looking shit, right? Now, my problem with this was seeing this clip and clips like it, because these are the type of images you see of Charles Manson, would make you think this dude is just super psycho, crazy, and a murdering psychopath, okay? And taken out of context, you can really do that to just about anybody. Now, the Helter Skelter theory says he went in and killed all these people, right? Especially Sharon Tate, and they're trying to say that he cut her baby out and everything else. And I know people seen movies on this or heard stories on this in passing, and they're like, yeah, Charles Manson, he's like one of the top serial killers ever. Problem is, Charles Manson never killed anybody. Now, I know you're like, I heard he killed people. Me too. But I researched all this, and he never physically killed anybody. Now, the thing that took this story from strange to even crazy was this clip that I found from the Oprah show on witches. Now, listen to this.
The victims are easily picked up. They are wandering teenagers looking for a good time, runaways, skid row bums, paper boys, paper girls. You can go out to the street the day before or the day during, pick up that child, drug him or whoever you want to, get him ready for the ceremony, and at that time, they will slice the person's throat open, pick up the blood in a chalice, because they believe that the power in the blood will add to them.
How do you know this? How do you know this?
I wasn't the only one who practiced this type
So
of...
have you practiced in going out and picking up people off the street and slicing their throats?
Yes, they were the easiest way to...
Why aren't you in jail?
Wait a minute. I want him to say it.
As a matter of fact,
why didn't they kill him? And why aren't you in jail?
Please let him speak.
Sharon Tate LaBianca's murder, okay, was a witch's hitting. Sharon Tate wanted out, but the thing is, the Illuminati...
What do you mean she wanted out? She was a witch?
Yes, she was tired of it. She wanted to get out, but
Sharon
the thing
Tate
is...
was a witch, okay.
Oh, but the thing is...
You base those allegations on what?
On when I was in, myself. I'm not the only one who knows this information. Anybody who was in witchcraft during that time can tell you the same thing. What happened was...
That Sharon Tate was a practicing witch?
Yes.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, the Illuminati...
I have no information to refute it, so I'm only going on what you're
The
saying.
Illuminati sent Charles Manson in to kill her. If you remember, she was killed. One leg was strung up from the rafter, her hands behind her, her throat sliced open. There was a tarot, 78 cards in a tarot deck. You look at the 12th major arcana one, it looks like the Hangman. That's exactly how Sharon Tate LaBianca was left. Charles Manson did not go into prison. He volunteered to go in.
So you're saying that Charles Manson came from this group, the Illuma?
He's one of the most powerful wizards alive today.
Okay.
Yeah, crazy, right? Puts a whole different spin on that Helter Skelter story, doesn't it? Now, I know that sounds real nuts to people. And trust me, I laughed at it when I first heard it. But I don't dismiss anybody, because that's not fair. And I give everybody a fair shake. So, I'm willing to venture down this rabbit hole. And if you guys want to come with me, you got to know straight off the bat that doing this research, I found some crazy stuff. There's going to be some graphic language and some graphic pictures in this. So, you know, if you're squeamish, you've been warned. But as of right now, that's where we're at with this. So I kept researching. And then I found this audio taken from a guy named John Todd. Now listen to this.
Up the book and everything. All right. Manson belonged to, I had to belong to many brotherhoods, okay? Manson, the brotherhood that he belonged to is called the Process. The only brotherhood I worry about. They are so radical that in order to kill me, they would gladly give their own life up right in a meeting. They were run out of England for human sacrifice. They have the inner and the outer process. The outer process is a good group. They have free coffee houses, free clothing, free places to live, and so on. The inner practice human sacrifice. They teach four God systems. Yahweh as the evil God, Lucifer as the good God, Jesus as one being punished because he spoke against Satan, and Satan as the earthly God. And they wear a cross, big silver cross, with a serpent engraved on the cross, showing that Satan and Christ are one through the cross. They were rolled up. They were a contract. He was paid to do it. Tate was breaking away. Her husband knew about it. Her husband went over to establish an alibi in Europe. The money came down. $50,000 came down from Toronto to New Orleans, and poor Manson only got $2,000 of it by the time it went through all the sticky fingers. But that's what the Tate killings were about. The others just happened to be there. She wanted out, and you don't get out unless you come through Christ. She didn't think about trying out. And her mistake was she warned him in advance. She was arguing with her husband. She was having a baby, and she didn't want the baby raised up in it, and she wanted out. And if you remember the trial script from the book, that's the one thing she begged. She says, she kept repeating over and over, don't kill me, don't kill my baby. Her baby was what she cared about. And that's the information that I have on it.
Now, John Todd has been around for a while, and he's got a questionable background of his own, and we're going to do a whole separate video on him. But his audio is fun to listen to, and he does a lot of Illuminati stuff if you're into that. Now, for us, it's time for us to go on a witch hunt. Now we got to figure out if Sharon Tate was a witch, and if anything these dudes said have any type of proof to it. So let's get to it. Now, in order for us to get to the bottom of this, we need to figure out how these people are connected. So to do that, we're going to start with Roman Polanski. Now, in 1967, he made a movie called Dance of the Vampire, where he cast his soon-to-be wife Sharon Tate to be a vampire's victim. Her character in this movie is referred to as a sacrifice to Lucifer. Early in her career, she starred in the British film Eye of the Devil, where she played a witch. During the filming of this movie, Sharon Tate started dabbling in a white witchcraft, Wicca. She was initiated into the coven of Alexanders by the self-proclaimed King of the Witches, Alexander Saunders. The High Priestess Maxine Saunders held Sharon Tate's initiation ritual in a movie trailer set on the set of the movie that she was filming. So yes, that in itself shows that Sharon Tate did have some type of connection to witchcraft at this point. But we still need to go back and look at Roman Polanski. Roman Polanski loved to make movies about the occult. In 1968, he released Rosemary's Baby, a movie about an actor-director who wanted to be a big star in Hollywood. So he offered his wife up to a religious Satanist cult. And they were bringing the son of Satan into the world by letting the devil himself sleep with his wife to bring in the Antichrist. Now, the crazy thing about this movie was, again, it was about Satanism and witchcraft, but he hired a man by the name of Anton LaVey to come in as a consultant on this movie. And for those who don't know who Anton LaVey is, not only did he play the character of the devil in this movie, but he's the founder of the Church of Satan, and he wrote the Satanist Bible. This man has been around for a while. He's dead now, but back in his day, he was friends with all the biggest celebrities of the time. Everybody wanted to be around this guy. And this guy used to have all types of satanic rituals and shows and all types of stuff at his Church of Satan. Which brings us to Susan Atkins. Now, in 1967, Susan Atkins was a stripper and an aspiring actress. She was hired by Anton LaVey to play a vampire in his Topless Vampire Review. Listen to what she said in her memoirs about that performance.
I was the perfect sexy vampire, ready for my casket lying at the center of the stage. I knew I'd never be able to get into that casket for real without getting stoned. I popped the acid tab into my mouth. I had shaken several people when I had risen from the casket and pointed a long, blood-red fingernail at the audience and marked them as my next victims.
Now here you can see Susan Atkins being inducted into the Church of Satan. Here's a couple pictures of her at Anton LaVey's church. Now what's weird here is we got a black witch and a white witch now. And this was way before Susan Atkins joined the Manson family. So now we gotta look at what these other people were saying, and there's some truth to what they were saying about this whole witch thing. But there's still more we need to look into. But who would have thought that the person that would later on kill Sharon Tate would also be into this witchcraft? And you couldn't write a story like this. What are the odds that Sharon Tate, Susan Atkins, Anton LaVey, and Roman Polanski all knew each other before ever meeting Charles Manson? If you remember what the guy from the Oprah show said about Charles Manson.
Illuminati sent Charles Manson in to kill her.
Now let's get one thing straight. Anytime you use the term Illuminati, you're opening up a can of worms so deep that we really can't get into it in this video. But there is truth to an Illuminati. But Illuminati is a blanket term that can describe shadow governments, government conspiracies, religious conspiracies, Satanism, or a bunch of other things. In this instinct, we're gonna say this dude's probably talking about a satanic conspiracy or a government conspiracy. But right now, we gotta ask ourselves if we're gonna go that route. Is Manson a patsy in this situation? Well, according to this man, he found a bunch of CIA papers. This is Charles A. Schlud. He's now deceased. He said he was given a bunch of secret CIA papers and files from this man right here. Don Bolk was an investigative journalist who took out the government and the mob. He uncovered a ton of corruption. Sadly, that's what got him taken out.
Don Bowles was an investigative reporter for the Arizona Republic. He would follow every lead in search of a story. His managing editor says he was doing that kind of digging the day a bomb exploded beneath his car.
He got a tip on some information on a land fraud case. And being a long-time investigative reporter, he decided to check it out. It's quite obvious now that that tip was a setup. But he was given some information which tended to involve some Arizona officials in a land fraud case.
When he went to meet his informant, the bomb exploded. Bowles lost an arm, both legs, and 11 days later he died.
These secret papers left behind by Bowles uncovered the CIA's MKULTRA project. The CIA's motivation in getting rid of this stuff, it was to get rid of the hippie movement. They had negative sociological ramifications, and they were trying to stop the Vietnam War. The CIA wasn't too happy about this, so they used MKUltra as a mind control experiment. Later, Charles Manson being held at Vacaville prison, where they were doing these experiments, they used him as a test subject. The drug, Orange Sunshine, that was given to Manson was also given to his followers. Tess Watson said it was like nothing he's ever had. The only people that had access to this drug were the CIA. This man, Ronald Stark, a known guy that worked for the CIA, was Charles Manson's dealer, and how Charles Manson was able to get the LSD for him and his family. The more I looked into this, the more none of it felt right with me. Charles Manson wasn't even a hippie. Charles Manson wasn't even from that era. Once he got out of jail, how did he convince a bunch of young girls, young guys, hippie dudes, to just follow him and do whatever he says? Well, it turns out these weren't just ordinary people, and the girls he hooked up with weren't ordinary girls. They all had a past. Not only that, the people they killed weren't ordinary people. They were all famous and connected to these people in some sort of way before Manson even got out of prison. And up to this point, Manson's been in prison most of his life for doing pretty much con artist type crimes. Carjacking, selling drugs, pimping. Like, this dude's not a murderer. So how would he be in the company of the Hollywood elite to even want to get them killed? How did he make his way to Hollywood? See, Manson grew up in prison. The other inmates were like his fathers. Everything he learned from the other inmates. He gave an interview on the occult, and this is what he had to say about it.
You know how the occult is. You get involved in all kinds of under darkness things that are running under nooses, that are running through just, I don't know, you know, it would take too long to explain it all. It's in prison when Diagnetics first started. Yeah, 1950.
And for those who don't know, what he's referring to is the Church of Scientology.
Arm of the church and the Masonry. I don't know how to put the Masons involved in that. I don't want to get tripped up with anyone else on any other level. But he come up with Diagnetics 1950. So a lot of the guys were interested in studying the way to process the mind, how to clear your mind from past confusion, how to resurrect the soul and be reborn within yourself. So that's where Scientology started. And then they started selling it, and then it got to be the process. And then the church of the last day, the last judgment, when it comes down and we go down in the basement, and you're laying up on the rack, you're going to do whatever the king tells you to do. It's that simple.
Not only did Manson learn a lot about the occult and underground dealings in prison, his cellmate Alvin Karpis, lone survivor of the Ma Baker gang, taught him how to play the guitar. It was said Manson wrote over 80 songs while in prison. As a side note, before we continue, look up the Franklin cover-up. There was a satanic child abuse sex ring being held in Boys Town. As a child, Charles Manson was being held at Boys Town on some charges because he was underage. And he was a victim of that whole scandal as well. So look into that. Back to the story. Once released from prison, Charles started playing guitar in San Francisco's Tenderloin district, gathering a huge, devoted followers. That's where he hooked up with Susan Atkins. And Susan Atkins would later bring in a bunch of other people who she knew previously. Later, Dennis Wilson, member of the Beach Boys, would end up picking up two of Charlie's girls while they were hitchhiking by chance. Later on that same time, Charlie and the girls ended up moving in with Beach Boy Dennis Wilson. And later on, Charlie ended up recording an album with the Beach Boys. One of the songs that would later be the B-side of the Beach Boys album was stolen from Charles Manson. It was called Cease to Exist. He wasn't happy about it. Check it out.
Just come and say you love me.
And that wouldn't be the last time people stole his music. Guns N' Roses did the same thing.
And all you're doing is crying, can you feel? Ah, those feelings real. Look at your game, girl.
And all you're doing is crying, can you feel? Ah, those feelings real. Look at your game.
The Beach Boys set up an audition with Terry Melcher for Charles Manson. Terry Melcher was the son of Doris Day, who just happened to live in the house that the murders took place in a year before the murders happened. Neil Young was a friend of Charles Manson who also redid one of his songs. He described how Manson felt being turned down by Terry Melcher.
Spooky times. I knew Charlie Manson, so it spooked the hell out of me.
Are you saying? That's relative.
He wasn't what you'd call a songwriter. He was like a song spewer. But turned down. He got turned down by record companies. He got turned down by Reprise. And I remember I told Mo Austin, I said, this guy, he's good. It's just a little out of control. But when he got turned down, that really pissed him off. Didn't take rejection well.
Now, once things fell out with the Beach Boys and Charles' record deal, him and his girls moved out to Spawning Movie Ranch deep in the desert. It was here that it was said they had wild sex orgies and did a ton of drugs. People heard about this and they flocked to Spawning Ranch. There they wanted to join Charlie's group. A lot of people got involved in this from this point. And let's look at this cast of characters. Susan Sadie Atkins, Patricia Greenwinkle, Leslie Van Houten, Lynette Squeaky Fromm, Bruce Davis, Bobby Bousselet, and the most notorious of them all, the murderer himself, Charles Tex Watson. Now, Bobby Bousselet was the roommate and by some accounts lover of Kenneth Anger. They wrote Lucifer Rising together and worked on it. They were friends with James Mansfield, and they were all members of Anton LaVey's Church of Satan. Funny thing about James Mansfield, she was said to be Anton LaVey's lover, and after a falling out, he put a curse on her, and then a little while later, she ended up dead. Now I know that sounds crazy, but that's the story.
Put a curse on Mansfield. When Mansfield's 5-year-old son was mangled by a lion at Jungle Land in Thousand Oaks, she took the curse seriously and went to LaVey and pleaded with him to save her son. Her son recovered, but Mansfield's bad luck continued. Rumor had it that Satan was at work here because on June the 29th, 1966, Mansfield and Brody were killed in a car crash. Mansfield was decapitated.
Now you see how this witch theory isn't starting to sound as crazy as it did in the beginning of this? Now these dots just keep connecting back to this Church of Satan. Now you don't have to believe in witchcraft, but they believe in witchcraft. And if that reality to them, then it's reality. Now, check this dude out. Now this is Colonel Michael Aquino. He's a high-ranking member of the military and CIA. He's also a high-ranking member of the Church of Satan and the Church of Set. He was implicated in the Franklin cover-up, the child trafficking sex ring that was uncovered by the government. He was also part of the MKULTRA program, which Charles Manson was a part of. Now, Roman Polanski is no stranger to witchcraft. He was part of the Laurel Canyon Coven, who ran witchcraft ceremonies out of a laboratory in the hills. He also filmed orgies with his wife Sharon Tate, amongst other Hollywood stars, for blackmail amongst other things. It was sad when Sharon Tate got pregnant, their marriage started to fall apart, and that's when Roman Polanski left the country in protest because he didn't want to have a baby. She told him it was her kid and she'll have it. This is when things started to unravel. He later fled the United States after being convicted of drugging and raping a 13-year-old girl.
Roman Polanski has been infamous for having sex with a 13-year-old girl and fleeing the United States. He fled the country when the judge tried to renege on the plea bargain. He talked to 60 Minutes about it in 1978.
You ran away, Roman. You ran away.
Well, I, as you say, ran away because I think that I was very unfortunate to have a judge who misused justice.
Now, given what we know about most of these people, we gotta ask ourselves, was Charles Manson a patsy? Was this a witch's hit? Let's ask Sharon Tate's mom what she thinks.
This man was not guilty of murdering my daughter, okay? Of all the 7 murders that I know of, he did not commit one of them, all right? I feel that he has taken the blame for all of them. And the ones that should be blamed for is Tex Watson.
See, she's right. We should be talking about Tex Watson. Funny how whenever this case comes up, nobody really wants to talk about him. All you hear about is crazy Charles Manson. Well, Tex Watson was brought in by the Beach Boy himself, Dennis Wilson. He just happened to see him hitchhiking one day picked him up, and then introduced him to Charlie. And that's how Tex Watson entered the family. Now let's see what Susan Atkins said really happened that night.
I remember getting in the car with Tex and Tex Watson and my other two co-defendants, three co-defendants actually. And before I ever got in the car, Tex and I had our own special little stash of cocaine. I think it was cocaine or methadone, I'm not sure which. We were speed, and we both snorted some speed and got in the car. We were very, very wired. As we went in, a car came up to the driveway, and I remember Tex getting out, and without saying anything, they were going to fire a shot. I was in the bushes, and...
That's when the young boy, Stephen Parent, was killed.
Was killed.
In the car, outside.
Right. The people in the house were all brought into the living room and tied up, and I remember that Wojtek Wachowski, I believe is his name, I had tied his hands with a towel and then was instructed to kill him. And I raised the knife that I had in my hand, and I couldn't put the knife down. I couldn't bring it down. It was just as though there was a force there that held my wrist, and I couldn't move. And as he saw that I couldn't move, then he very easily undid the ties, the towel that I tied his wrist with, and he and I began to fight. And I remember I was screaming for help, and he was screaming for help, and then Tex came and helped me, and I was left to sit and watch Sharon Tate. And about that time, all I can remember seeing is people just scattering in different places and running in different places, and I was left sitting with Sharon Tate, and she was talking to me, and I remember that I had absolutely, I felt nothing. I felt absolutely nothing for her as she begged for her life and for the life of her baby. And Jesus. I remember when we first went in, one of the people said, "Who are you?" And Tex said, "I'm the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's business." And I remember that in my conscience, it's so alive in me, even just recalling it. I remember that I had gone so far and there was no turning back. That even if I had wanted to run, even if I had wanted to leave, I couldn't. It was like I was caught in something that I had no control over. I had absolutely no say-so as to what was happening there. I was just like a tool in the hands of the devil, is the only way I can put it. And I believe that it was by the grace of God that my hand did not go down with that knife on Wojtek Wachowski's chest. I believe that...
Well, who did kill those people?
That night?
Yeah.
Tex.
And with that being said, let's look at the crime scene and see if this looks like a satanic ritual to you. And even though when interviewed, Tex Watson said this about the case.
I hope in no way that I've in any way I've given the impression that I'm trying to blame anything on my parents or blame anything on drugs or blame anything on rock music or blame anything on Manson, because I do take complete responsibility.
So since Tex Watson took full responsibility for these killings, my question is, why aren't we hearing about Tex Watson all the time? Why isn't his face being plastered all over magazines looking like a psycho? Why don't they make movies about Tex Watson and everything? You only hear about Charles Manson and the magic he had and the way he can mind control people and the hypnotizing people. It just sounds too sensational. So now we need to ask ourselves, what did Manson know about the people in Hollywood and the government that they just had to put him behind bars. And
how would the prosecution tie Manson into these crimes that had been physically committed by other people?
Well, when they offer one of the people in your group immunity, and then the president himself comes out on TV during the trial and tell people you're guilty before you're even sentenced.
Was guilty, directly or indirectly, of 8 murders without reason.
When you do that in the court of public opinion, then the trial's pretty much already over. But this is where Boriosi came up with his whole Helter Skelter scheme and got people to buy into that bullshit. It also didn't help that the lawyer Manson and them had turned up dead mysteriously out of nowhere.
And his body was found 6 months later, but it was so badly decomposed that we could never tell the cause of death.
Was found under a rock that had fallen on him or pushed on him or whatever. It sort of looks like someone did him in.
And then several years later, a former member of Manson's family called me wanting to remain anonymous and said that Hughes was murdered by the Manson family.
Others say the death of Ronald Hughes was just a tragic accident. No one was ever charged in connection with his death.
Hughes, I think the district attorney killed him. Because he was the only lawyer we had that was worth anything. He was the only one that was doing anything for us. You know, I think someone pushed him off a cliff.
So given all this new evidence that we shed light on and these different theories that we just uncovered, what do you think? Do you think that it was like the official story said? Do you think Charles Manson was a patsy that knew too much about these Hollywood friends he was cool with and these government experiments? Do you think Sharon Tate was a witch who was a victim of a witch's cult? Or do you think the occult had anything to do with it at all? Or do you still believe this story here?
Starr, who said we need to use Helter Skelter.
What does Helter Skelter mean?
Well, where does it come from?
To Charles Manson, Helter Skelter means the black man rising up against the white establishment and murdering the entire white race. That is, with the exception of Charlie and his family, who intended to escape to the desert and live in the bottomless pit, a place that he got from Revelation 9.
Whatever you believe, let's discuss it in the comment section. If anything, this was an interesting story, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll let Charles Manson leave you with a few words. And until next time, everybody stay cool. Please like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.
God gives life, God takes life.
But how come you didn't live your life with that commandment?
I did.
That's not what I heard.
Well, that's what you heard. It's a little different from what you heard and what is.
Do you feel fortunate that you survived because the law was declared unconstitutional?
There was no doubt in my mind I would survive. I'm in harmony with the truth. I didn't kill anyone.